Well, I want to thank Craig Cobia for having me here and for making a difference in your community. You know, every community has a couple of people that really make that community livable, likable, a place that you can be proud of. Now, I shouldn't say every community. I've been in some with porn shops and strip clubs because nobody stands up to them. Craig Cobia has done all of you a wonderful favor. And he sticks with it and makes a difference. And I want to say also, as you know, that there's no, the saying I think is, every great man has a woman behind him, and his wife, Chantel, is a great help as well. So I hope you will support this couple because they are supporting you. They get up every day and do something for you. Well, you've heard that I was the chief of the Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section at the United States Department of Justice. By the way, this is the first time I've ever given a talk off an iPad. And I just had this about 5 days. So if I press the wrong button and I begin reading the news and sports to you, would you just wave me off there? The Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, my old office at Justice, charged with prosecuting the adult pornographers and the child pornographers, came about because there was a time in America when pornography was rampant in society. The Department of Justice was not enforcing the laws. Most states refused to enforce those laws, and pornographers began to take advantage. This was about 25, 27 years ago. And what you saw throughout America was that porn shops were locating in perfectly decent communities like this. Or you saw that gas stations decided to have in their magazine or video section a porn section. You saw pharmacies include magazines that were pornographic in nature, and people were getting very upset by this. And then the pornographers decided to do something even worse. They would rent mailing lists of people. If you subscribe to this magazine or that or this publication, those lists are all for sale. And they would buy up these lists and send sexually explicit 4-page advertisements for their videotapes into communities indiscriminately. So kids were getting these and adults were getting them, and it was very intrusive, and they didn't care because pornographers don't care about us. But what the people did is complain to the Postal Inspection Service, you're down at your post office, they complained to the Department of Justice, they complained to the President of the United States, and a group of concerned citizens went to Ronald Reagan, then President, and asked him to do something about it, and he did. He called for the Attorney General's Commission on Pornography. This is a new commission to study whether or not pornography is harmful. And they issued their report a couple of years later after holding hearings all around the country, public hearings, and let people testify. And so many people came out to testify. Women who had lost husbands or children to pornography. You had men who had been addicted to pornography and were cured, telling about the great effect. Of course, you had the American Civil Liberties Union saying that all laws on pornography should be taken off the books. And you had other liberals who would say that sort of thing. But in the end, the Attorney General's Commission on Pornography issued its final report in, I believe it was 1986, and they, in several studies that they released, demonstrated conclusively that pornography is very harmful to the individual, to the family, and to society. Attorney General Ed Meese at the time took that report and he declared a war on pornography in the United States. He established my office, the Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section, in the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and we began prosecuting the major producers and distributors of hardcore adult pornography as well as child pornography. and had a very successful run. In nearly 5 years, we never lost a case. That's because in a court of law, you have to show at least part of the videotape of the pornography. And part of the test of the obscenity law, obscenity refers to hardcore pornography, it's a synonymous term, part of the test that the jury is given is whether or not what you see on that videotape of pornography represents your community standards. And it didn't matter where we brought these cases. I mean, we brought them in, even in Las Vegas, we brought them in Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, all throughout the South. Wherever we brought these cases, the people on the juries said, this does not represent our community values. We're better than that. And we had 120 convictions in 5 years. And it really damaged the pornography industry, and it changed the nature of pornography. All the rape films were taken off the shelves because they knew that if in a prosecution, if there was a rape film, they would get convicted for sure. Nobody's going to say that represents their community values. They also had these pseudo-child pornography films with maybe an 18-year-old girl that might be legal to make the film, but she was dressed as a 12-year-old, and it was an incest-type film or a school setting, and you know, et cetera. All those were taken off the shelves. And the nature of pornography became softer. And so we were winning the war on pornography, and then two things happened. Number one, Bill Clinton was elected president of the United States, and prosecutions on the federal level of all those major producers and distributors of pornography stopped. There wasn't a vote on it, it just stopped. Bill Clinton and his team were not going to favor you and your communities over the pornographers. The second thing that happened at that time is that the internet became popularized. The internet, ladies and gentlemen, is the sexual revolution times 1,000. And the Clinton administration stopping pornography prosecutions at the same time that pornography was booming because of the internet was wrong and harmful. There was a new company that started up then called America Online, and they would gather this pornography on their own servers and distributed it to anyone who signed up. So you knew that for $19.95 you could have a porn shop in your home if you subscribed to America Online. And soon people did have a porn shop in their home. Every home, it seemed, had a computer. And Congress got so many complaints about people that their kids were getting pornography on computer that they tried on 2 occasions to write legislation that said that the pornographers online must block out all pornography so that kids couldn't see it or other people couldn't see it unless they subscribed to it. And they had to have some indicia of adulthood. They would have had to have a credit card that they put in or some way to register in advance to show they're adults, to keep all pornography on the internet away from the kids. But our wise and superior Supreme Court of the United States said that the pornographers have greater rights than you as parents to protect your children. And those laws went by the wayside, and now, of course, any person in America, no matter how young, can get pornography on the internet. And the result is a whole generation of children has grown up with a steady diet of pornography. Dr. Jason Carroll and his colleagues published a widely cited paper in the Journal of Adolescent Research that tells about how widespread this is. They studied 5 colleges around the country on pornography use, and they determined that in America, approximately 87% of the boys and 31% of the girls in college are consumers of pornography. And it doesn't matter what religion, it doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what social economic status that you're in, this is the reality in America. If someone had predicted back at the beginning of the internet age that if we didn't curb pornography, things would get so bad in America that children would become producers and distributors of child pornography, you'd have thought they were crazy. I certainly would, because I was in the midst of all those battles. But look at this trend that we have in America today called sexting. Many of you are familiar with that. Kids are taking pictures on their smartphones of themselves naked, or their friends without clothes, or sex acts that they're engaged in or others are engaged in, and they're sexting those. That is, they're texting those pictures to their friends and to others. This is primarily a phenomenon that happens with the kids, the teenagers, and young adults. But when you look at that trend, what is it? It really is the production and distribution of child pornography by children. Now, child pornography is a taboo in society. If you knew that your next-door neighbor was a child pornographer, you'd be horrified. But kids today are engaging in sexting without a second thought. Under federal law, first offense of a child pornography crime will get you 5 years. Now, this is a very serious crime and a very serious development in our nation today. A couple of years ago in Richmond, California, there was an incident that I think is emblematic of this generation of young people. The girl who was the leader of the prom dance left the gymnasium, and she was surrounded on school property by a group of boys. And one after another, they raped her. This went on for 2 hours, and this circle of kids, no one called police, but they got out their video cameras and videotaped this scene. Several of them did. Now, let's just break that down for a minute. Rape is one of the most serious crimes. Why would these kids engage in this felonious behavior? And I submit it is because they've been there before this incident. They may not have been there physically before, but they've been there mentally. Dr. Sharon Cooper, who is a pediatrician and a professor of medicine at the University of North Carolina, who has studied the effects of pornography on children, says that children view pornography different than adults. When a child views pornography, they actually believe that they are experiencing what they are watching. That's different than an adult. Adult may want to experience that, but a child's brain tricks them into believing that that is something they are actually doing. Pornography, she says, normalizes sexual harm. Pornography normalizes sexual harm. The harms of pornography have now reached pandemic level in America. What about those kids that were standing around with their video cameras and videotaping this? Voyeurism is a very serious crime. And if you knew there was a voyeur next door, you'd keep your kids, your family indoors. You'd go to the sheriff and ask to get rid of that person in your community. But we live in a voyeuristic age. Those kids in that circle are used to seeing others having sex. They're used to watching people be raped on camera. And so they engage in that activity, which they believe they've actually experienced in the past. We have a pandemic of harm, as I said. It's to the point, ladies and gentlemen, where I think that the government should really consider doing what the pharmaceutical industry is required to do. And that is, with every prescription drug, maybe there should be a package insert that tells what the consequences might be if you take this drug. I mean, after all, this is done in order for you to have informed consent. And the drugs might say, if you have a heart condition, don't take this drug. You know, if you get sleepy, excessively sleepy, taking this drug, discontinue immediately. Well, what would our package insert for pornography say? It should say what we know definitively, and that is, if you consume pornography, you may become addicted. And most who become addicted will never recover. Never recover. because most will never seek recovery. Men are too ashamed, and that's foolish, too ashamed to go get help. Most will never recover, and many who are addicted to pornography today are children. There's whole practices, medical practices, treating children who are addicted to pornography. And what you have to understand, let's go to the next one. A related item in that package insert should say that to maintain sexual excitement from pornography, if you decide to consume it, you will have to consume harder and more deviant material. And as you digress, as you deviate down, you may become addicted to child pornogaphy. Now, this is important to understand. When I left the Justice Department 17, 18 years ago, child pornography was virtually wiped out in America. We had many big projects and whatnot, but there weren't that many pedophiles. Why do we have a boom in child pornography today? You just do a Google search on your computer for child pornography in the news section, and you'll just find endless stories, tens of thousands of them, and every day there's more. Where did all these child pornographers come from? They aren't pedophiles. They're people like you and me who began looking at pornography. But what you have to understand is the brain science that gets them from Playboy to child pornography. And Dr. Norman Dodge, who is the author of the best-selling book, The Brain That Changes Himself, wrote a very simple explanation of this. It's not a full explanation of what happens with your brain, but it's an important explanation. He points out that there are two pleasure systems in the brain. One is dopamine-fueled. This is the excitement pleasure system. And, for example, in marital sex, you get excited, and the dopamine fuels that excitement to have sex. Then, after sexual relations, you have endorphins that give you that satisfactory pleasure. That's the satisfactory pleasure system in the brain. Two pleasure systems. But with pornography, there's only the dopamine-fueled excitement pleasure. So a man looks at pornography, and he keeps wanting to look at pornography. There's no satisfaction. You don't just say, I've had enough. No, you keep going to harder and more deviant material. And the sad thing is, the more you look at it, the more dopamine your system will have to produce in order to get you excited. But to get excited, you will have to move to harder material. Those Playboy images won't satisfy you. So you'll go to all kinds of terrible acts of sex, rape, incest, etc., and many will deviate down to child pornography. That's when they get caught. Every investigator of child pornography knows this to be true. Most of the people, the overwhelming number, more than 99% of those that they investigate and convict for child pornography are not pedophiles. There aren't that many pedophiles in America. Now, that is a psychological problem, pedophilia, and it's not something you're born with. You can develop, but these people that are being arrested today are people who were interested in adult pornography and went down. Well, let's talk more about that package insert. One of the things it should say is that pornography consumption can lead to sexual dysfunction. Now, this is something I don't want to be explicit about, but the steady consumption of pornography by males leads to something called porn-induced sexual dysfunction. It is a growing problem. It's the so-called Viagra problem. That's a drug that's used not mostly by the Bob Dole generation, but by young people. Because on pornography, they train their brain to get excited sexually only by what they see on the video screen or in print. And so when they're married, like you heard this person here, he thought when he got married that problem would disappear. No. He's changed his brain. He's in another world. And having real relations with a woman of his dreams does not work. That package insert should say that if you consume pornography, you're more likely to visit prostituted women, 4 times more likely than others, according to at least one study. That package insert should also say that the violence that is so common in pornography will lead you to violence with your spouse and with others. It should say that you will be more inclined to take unwanted sexual privileges with another person, and even it may lead to rape. There's one study that shows that 60% of the consumers of pornography in this study said that if they could get away with it, they would be willing to rape a woman. There's another study, a sample of 30 juveniles who had committed child sex crimes. 29 of those 30 juvenile criminals had a life of pornography, regular consumers of pornography from the average age was 7 years. That package insert should say that porn consumption will lead to a significant increase in the destruction of your marriage. One study says you're 3 times more likely to get divorced if you're consuming pornography. Pornography conditions one's brain to enjoy intimate self-gratification exclusively. That leads to the destruction of marital bonding, which is required for a marriage to continue. You destroy that bond. And that's why you heard on this film, the woman went to a psychologist who was treating her, and she said, "I wonder if my husband loves you," and he could say definitively he does not. What he loves is what he's addicted to, and everything else is secondary. Well, we could go on and on and on about this, but the results on our society are pretty dramatic. There's a study of girls by the American Association, the American Psychological Association, it's not too long ago, it was a task force, that said that their conclusion was, in the last 10 years, the self-image of girls has changed dramatically. That it's no longer for their self-worth to be a straight-A student or be a good athlete or just a good person. Their self-worth is tied up in their sexiness. This is called, according to the American Psychological Association, sexual self-objectification. Imagine the effect that that has on girls. And where are they getting that idea? I mean, the boys are pressuring this. It's in the magazines. Of course, it's in pornography. But we live in a sexualized society. For boys, watching pornography leads to a sense of entitlement. They believe that with a steady consumption of pornography, that their girlfriends should be willing to show themselves in the same way that they've seen others. They can go online and look up many of the starlets from Hollywood and see them naked. There's whole websites that catalog these girls, these actresses. In every movie they've appeared in a sex scene, every topless thing, every magazine they've ever appeared in. So boys are consuming all that. And what does that lead them to want and desire and demand in their girlfriends and their acquaintances? There's even a trend on college campuses, the name of which escapes me, but it's, you know, boys and girls just having sex together. There's no bonding. They just have sex and move on. These boys, this is according to Dr. Marianne Layton, who's the director of sexual trauma and psychopathology program at the University of Pennsylvania. She says that viewing porn develops permission-giving beliefs. And what she means by that, and she writes about it, is that the more you see pornography online, the more you think that this is normal and that what I do is normal. And sex acts that I see in pornography are what other people engage in. And so she says that porn consumption leads to, for example, the rape myth. That is, that women may not enjoy rape initially, but they will enjoy it because that's what they've been seeing on camera. They believe that women enjoy violence along with sex, etc., etc. And porn, then, is ruining the lives of many, many young people. What happens, according to Dr. Sharon Cooper, is that as they're consuming pornography, they are affecting the development of that prefrontal cortex of the brain. That's the home of good judgment, common sense, impulse control, and emotion. And it has to develop just right. And it has to develop over a time period. And it isn't fully developed until 22, 23. Some won't fully develop that part of the brain until 30. But these kids looking at these images coming over and back at them, what about their good judgment, common sense, impulse control, and emotion? It gets destroyed. It gets distorted. Pornography leads to sexual trafficking. And any of your sexual trafficking groups understand this. I was a trainer for the U.S. government, for law enforcement and others around the country for several years. And all the sex trafficking groups are opposed to the consumption of pornography. Because if you're looking at sexual trafficking, you have to look at the demand side of it. Who are these people who are demanding sex with a prostitute? And prostitution in America goes hand in hand with sex trafficking. There's no mid-size or big city that has any amount of prostitutes, or any of these online services that offer prostitutes. There's none of those that don't also have sexually trafficked victims. It's so widespread in America. So it goes hand in hand. In fact, there are websites today where you can go online, put in your credit card, pick out from pictures of naked women a sexually trafficked victim, and pay to have that girl perform sex acts on camera. When that scene is over, you can buy that videotape, and if you don't want it, they'll sell that to someone else. So the pornographers have actually figured out how to make the consumer pay for the production of pornography, and they use sexually trafficked victims. Well, all this is the bad. I want to talk a little bit about the good. What I'm seeing now is some hope. There's more hope to solve this dreadful problem in America than I've seen in many, many years. Because the harm from pornography is now so widespread in America, so widespread, that there are clinical practices springing up throughout the country to treat those who are harmed by this, those who are addicted by this, marriages who are falling apart. Many psychologists and psychiatrists are getting fully trained on what to do. We're also seeing a trend in various religions where the churches realize that they have a problem, and this is in every congregation, and this is many ministers who have a problem. The problem of the pandemic of harm from pornography is now recognized in America, and so there's hope. No one who has a problem should feel that they are without hope. And if you're like this suffering woman on here whose husband is addicted, he can get help and you can get help. There's a bright future. You have to reach out and grasp it. Second, we now have something that we didn't have years ago when I was prosecuting. We have indisputed evidence, volumes of peer-reviewed research showing there's definitive harm from pornography. So Hugh Hefner and those people who have always advocated it's just what a sophisticated gentleman does, now we all know that they are wrong, and they're nothing more than dirty old men. We have the scientific evidence on our side. There's another trend that I think is very positive. In the mainstream press, on mainstream television programs like the one you saw here, we are now seeing what we have been saying in our maybe conservative circles for many years, and that is that pornography is a national problem in America. It's being written about more and more. But I want to say that one of the things that I'm most encouraged about is that I think, even though the United States Department of Justice for many years has not enforced the laws against illegal hardcore adult pornography, I think we're seeing a trend to change that. I don't hold out any hope for Barack Obama and his administration. You may be a Democrat, I'm not offending you, but we've tried 6 ways from Sunday to get them to agree to just enforce the laws that are on the books. But I am seeing great strides in Congress. We have developed a program called the War on Illegal Pornography. The focal point of the War on Illegal Pornography is to get our laws that make it illegal enforced. And while Obama won't do it, many in Congress, even liberals like Dianne Feinstein, senator from California, are now waking up to the harm from pornography, and they want to do something about it. And I could go on and on about that, but Congress is attuned to it, and I don't think the next president can afford not to enforce these laws. Now let's just talk for a brief minute what these laws are. Did you know that it is a violation of federal law, 5 years in the federal penitentiary, to distribute hardcore or obscene pornography on the internet? That shocks most people. You mean all that stuff on the internet is illegal? Yes. And there's hundreds, thousands of commercial websites that distribute pornography. It so happens that most of that really only a handful of companies control most all the commercial sites where porn is distributed on the internet. But that's illegal. Did you know that it's illegal to distribute hardcore, obscene pornography on cable and satellite? Yet Comcast, Verizon, all these companies distribute it. Why? Their general counsels are telling them this is illegal, but go ahead and do it because the Justice Department under this administration is looking the other way. They favor pornographers rather than the rest of us, and so they can get by millions of dollars they'll earn, keep it on there. And so they're absolutely operating illegally. And do you know that if there was one prosecution, the Justice Department could take Comcast's satellite. They could take their buildings that they distribute this from. And because under federal law, if you break the law, you can be required to forfeit all the property that you use to break that law. Did you know that it's illegal to distribute that hardcore pornography that's in most hotels and motels? That is illegal. The porn channel is absolutely illegal. But we could do away with that. One company controls all that hardcore pornography that goes into all those hotels. So one prosecution and all hotels would be clean in America? Aren't we deserving of that? That's a law we got passed. Finally, it's illegal to distribute pornography in a retail shop. If you have a porn shop in your community or in your state, they're operating illegally under federal law. The U.S. attorney, federal prosecutor, can send the FBI in there, gather all the evidence from their illegal porn shop, and bring them to trial, convict them, and own the building, own the bank account, own the guy's car. If he's been working out of his home, own the home. Now, why aren't those laws enforced? Because someone favors pornographers over you and me. But I'm very hopeful that that's about to change. Imagine what our country would be like if that temptation of pornography was not there. Let me conclude with some advice, humbly conclude with some advice. First of all, get involved. And I see so many young people here. Get involved. The community that you live in didn't get there by accident. As I said in the introduction, there's a few people, relative few people, that keep that community a place that you want to live. Get involved with Citizens for Decency. It doesn't take your fortune. It won't take all your time, but if everybody pulls the load is easier. And the community stays clean. And your children, your family can stay clean. Help Citizens for Decency. Give them a few dollars a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. Sacrificial giving, that's important, or you'll lose your community. I can't count the number of communities that I've been in. And I used to work to try to help communities get sexually oriented businesses out, the sex shops, the strip clubs. And people say, I don't know how we got here. Well, I know how they got there. People didn't stand up, like Craig Cobia stands up. Don't let him stand up alone. Second of all, get your internet filtered in your home. And kids, if you're in college, get an internet filter. Why be tempted? Something like 18% of the households in America have porn blocking software. And it's relatively cheap, 50 bucks a year. Get a good blocking software and take care of it. If you want to know where there's some good software, we have a website called pornharms.com. Pornharms.com. There's resources on there, and it lists several of the blocking companies. get one and do something with it. There's even blocking software that monitors your your computer use. And what you do with this software is you appoint another person who has access to every site that you've been on. Husbands, it might be your wife, or it might be one of your good friends. Two Christian men decide, well, I'll be your monitor and you be mine. So every site they visit, that person, that partner knows about it. That's important. But you need to have that for your kids. Every site they go on, you need to know where they are. Because, as I said, it's 87% of, by the time they get to college, 87% are involved. Don't let that happen to your family. Talk to your children. Don't be embarrassed. Talk to your children. Whatever age they are, talk to your children. Tell them about the importance. Tell them about the addiction. Tell them what pornography will do to them. And make sure they know where you stand. You're the most important person in their lives. Keep the computer in an open place. If you need help, get it now. Get it now. You saw this man on the videotape. 3 times he went back to porn, 30-year problem. It becomes that. People who are addicted to pornography will tell you, if they've been addicted to another substance, cocaine or alcohol, they'll tell you porn addiction is the worst. As the sheriff said, you get those images in your mind, you don't unsee them. They are there, always tempting. Get help now. And there are some wonderful places where you can get help. LifeStar is in your community. The LDS Family Services. Get help. Get help. Another thing, do a survey of your community. Are all the computers on your library filtered? Craig got the law, tried to get a law that says all computers have to be filtered for everybody. And your legislature said, oh no, adults should have pornography in the library. No, there are countless incidences of adults looking at porn on the library and molesting kids. Looking at porn on the library and harassing the librarians. One man's a famous case. One man followed this librarian home, got on the bus with her. She never knew about it, raped her, killed her on the way home. Every library in every computer should be porn-free. The American Library Association sounds like a good name. They want every library computer unfiltered for kids and adults. That's their goal. And so they are the ones influencing your library. Doesn't matter that your state law, that you only got halfway, and it says it's only going to be blocked when kids are on it. Go back to that legislature. Just imagine, you'd have that law today if everybody in this room would have called 10 times to the state legislature, to the governor, to people who make a difference, the people who lead you. They're your representatives. And even though the law is only going to say they're only blocked for children, that doesn't matter. Go into your local local library and tell your library board you want all computers in your family, in your community library, blocked. There's no law that says they can't be. There's no constitutional right to view pornography on library computers. So if your library 3 months from now is still unblocked, that's on you. You can make a difference. Survey your community. If you got a porn shop, strip club, something in your community or neighboring community, get rid of them. You have the power to do that. I was telling a group yesterday about a group like Citizens for Decency that went out to a strip club. They tried to get rid of this. The city tried to get rid of it, couldn't get rid of it. Or it wasn't a strip club, it was a porn shop. And they developed the chocolate chip cookie campaign. Baked cookies, and every man that went in there, they gave him this little bag of chocolate chip cookies, and it had on a little saying about keeping clean. And what happened? People were too embarrassed to go into that porn shop, and it shut down. So join the war on pornography. Finally, pray for America. That's my last word. Pray for America. Those of you who, like me, are a little older have seen the rapid decline. Pray for America. It's a country worth saving. God bless.